أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر إنا أعطيناك الكوثر إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Thank you, Taha, for that very eloquent recitation of Quran. We will now have a recitation of poetry in English by Muhammad Zahid. Please welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I would like to congratulate you all on this very special day of Imam Hassan's birthday. Today I'll be reading a poem called Heavens Salute Its Master by Nuri Sardar. The heavens salute its master, the birth of Imam Mujtaba. Tonight's a night, what a night, descends from heavens a light, glorious in all his might, and beauty adores his sight. A night like this, what became, lit is an immortal flame. He puts all beauty to shame, born with an eternal name. To a cradle of light born, injustice veils torn. On earth a heavenly dawn, upon it Hassan is drawn. With three, God bless you Hassan, born one of Ali's children, raised by the best of women, master of youth in heaven. There's something about you, sweet, so patient during deceit. With Hussein, two heavens meet beneath your mother's 2 feet. Your name Ahmed's heart would wear, you climbed on his back in prayer, showing the world together that 2 moons the sun held dear. You resembled Muhammad, it's only fair that you led. One reason you faced hatred, within his footsteps you tread. Known as Hassan, the patient, you conquered each bereavement, your name of life transient, millions from you have learned. Hassan, symbol of patience, you are not just heaven's prince. In your light and ambience, your heaven's very fragrance. Held, he gazed into Ali's eyes affectionately, whilst adored him and showed him affection, Ali. This newborn had such an effect on Ali, that it made him recall Muhammad, his master. Salawat.
If everyone can please move forward. Thank you, Muhammad, for that very beautiful recitation of poetry. We will now have a recitation of a nasheed in English by Sayyid Ali Riza. Please welcome him with the loudest of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. I'll be reciting a poem in English. My love is for Hassan, right behind him I'll stay, with or without a grave. They can keep me away. Angels are calling, the world rejoicing. The light of Mujtaba has now arrived. The sun is rising, Zahra is smiling. The chief of paradise has now arrived. The chief of paradise has now arrived. Sallallahu alayhi ya Mujtaba, sallallahu alayhi ya Mujtaba, sallallahu alayhi ya Mujtaba. Twice you gave all your wealth, leave a portion for me to serve you at your feet. Well, make my life complete, a burning candle, a bright example. You're the light so shine upon us now. Fearless in battle, you did dismantle the enemies, so come and lead us now. Angels are calling, the world rejoicing. The light of Mujtaba has now arrived. The sun is rising, Zahra's smiling. The chief of paradise has now arrived. The chief of paradise has now arrived. Sallallahu alayhi ya Mujtaba, sallallahu alayhi ya Mujtaba, sallallahu alayhi ya Mujtaba. All of your followers act only on your call, whether you sit or stand. The flag will never fall. For us betrayal is the most shameful. Never will we leave you, Hassan. We are so grateful that since the cradle we have been singing the name of Hassan. We have been singing the name of Hassan. Angels are calling, the world rejoicing. The light of Mujtaba has now arrived. The sun is rising, Zahra's smiling. The chief of paradise has now arrived. The chief of paradise has now arrived. وهو الكريم ابن الكريم وأخو الكريم وجده خير الأنام. وهو الحسن ابن علي وأخو الحسين وأمه خير النساء العالمين. صلوات.
Thank you, Sayyid Ali Riza, for that very beautiful recitation of poetry. We will now have an English nasheed by Muhammad Ibrahim. Please recite aloud salawat.
Salawat. Today we are celebrating the birth of the Prince of Heaven. Today we are celebrating the birth of the Prince of Heaven. If they ask me who you are Ibn Haydar. Splendid like your grandfather, gentle like your mother. You are the Sayyid of heaven. Oh Mawla, my dear Hassan. When Sabr wants his master, at your door knocks his shoulder. At your door knocks his shoulder. Nabi today's elevated, the moon surely has been sighted. Nabi today's elevated, the moon surely has been sighted. When the people get hungry, they come to you freely. They don't have a dime to spend, mercy flows from your hand. You are the fountain of knowledge, Khalifas in your lineage. When Shaitan tries to outsmart you, strength of a treaty union, strength of a treaty union. Ali is thanking his Allah, rejoicing with his Fatima. Ali is thanking his Allah, rejoicing with his Fatima. There are men who have worry, dying they find scary. Your love in their heart they lack, to you they turn their back. Your Shias, we don't fear death. Walayas are pride and wealth. Your dhikr increases our health. For you is our every breath. For you is our every breath. Today we are celebrating the birth of the Prince of Heaven. Ali is thanking his Allah, rejoicing with his Fatima. Salawat.
Thank you, Muhammad Ibrahim, for that very beautiful recitation of poetry. I would now like to invite Hujjatul Islam, Sayyid Sulayman Hasan, for the speech. Please recite aloud Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. As you know, today is the eve of the 15th of the month of Ramadan, in which we celebrate the blessed birth of our second Imam, the son of Imam Ali and Sayyida Fatima, the grandson of our beloved Prophet, and that is Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, Imam Hassan alayhi salam was our second Imam. He was the elder son and the oldest grandson of our Prophet, the elder son of Imam Ali and Sayyida Fatima. And he was, of course, the older brother of Imam Hussein. Sometimes people, they have such a love for Imam Hussein and a connection to the courage and to the sacrifice of Imam Hussein that the life and the love of Imam Hussein may overshadow in their mind the importance of Imam Hassan. But we should remember that the order of our Imams is not a coincidence. And it was not like a seniority where people, they wait their turn and then they become the Imam or the leader of the Muslim Ummah. Imam Hassan was not the Imam after Imam Ali and before his brother Imam Hussein because he was older, but because he was in his character and in his attributes the one person who was able to lead the Muslim Ummah in the trying circumstances after the martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam. And if you know nothing else about Imam Hassan, then just to recognize the greatness of Imam Hussein, which all of humanity can recognize from his courage and from his sacrifice in Karbala, and to know that Imam Hussein was a follower and considered himself to be one of the obedient followers of Imam Hassan, that gives us an idea and an inkling of the nobility and the rank that Imam Hassan must have possessed, even if we don't know anything specific about his life. But then we can understand what is the rank and what is the reason for that greatness. It is not just something that we have to say there must have been something there. Because looking at the life of Imam Hassan, what we see is that his sacrifice, his patience, his character, it set the stage, not just for that beautiful sacrifice of Karbala, which saved Islam, but in many ways for the imamate and for the leadership of all of our subsequent Imams, beginning with Imam Hussein alayhi salam and all the way through our later Imams from the descendants of our third Imam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And how is that? It is because after Imam Ali's martyrdom, for the first time, Muawiyah claimed to be a caliph. As long as Imam Ali was alive, Muawiyah never dared to claim that he was the caliph or that he was the rightful leader or ruler of the Muslims. He just found some way to say that my relative Uthman was killed unjustly, and I want to take revenge, and I want to bring to justice those people who caused that assassination and who caused all of that chaos in Medina. And he even implied that he might be willing to accept or submit to the authority of Imam Ali if Imam Ali gave Muawiyah what he wanted, which was to continue a movement against the opponents of Uthman. This was not a sincere effort by Muawiyah to seek justice. It was an excuse to try to grab power. But he never claimed to be the leader of the Muslims. Even if it wasn't a sincere move on the part of Muawiyah, many people in Syria in particular, and maybe elsewhere, they may have been confused. They may have said, well, he has a point. There was a crime committed, or there was a very grave assassination that took place, and he has a point. He wants to find out who were the people that committed that act, and he wants to punish them. After the martyrdom of Imam Ali, for the first time, in a very direct manner, all of the values of Islam were publicly and explicitly turned upside down. The Muawiyah that you and I know from history, that was the Muawiyah for the 20 years after the martyrdom of Imam Ali, who became a tyrannical king and now began to pay people to make up false ahadith, to publicly curse Imam Ali alayhi salam, and to try to undermine all of the sayings of the Prophet that were circulating in praise of Ahlul Bayt, and changing the teachings and the practices that the Muslims had learned from the Prophet, and in short, to convert the Muslim religious community and ummah into an empire that would be ruled first by Muawiyah and then by his children and his descendants after him. This was from the time of Imam Hassan alayhi salam that this evil began. Until then, none of the previous governments, nor even Muawiyah himself, could publicly oppose the teachings of Islam and the sayings of the Prophet. And so if you want to understand the greatness of Imam Hassan, it was he who established that method of a principled opposition to the false teachings of Muawiyah and Banu Umayyah. The utilization of Islam not to serve God and to serve the needs and to uplift humanity, but rather just for personal interests and to oppress other people. And all of the wonderful incidents that we have in the lives of Ahlul Bayt, their struggles, their sacrifices, the ways in which they were able to protect the true teachings of Islam, all of those were built upon the foundation that Imam Hassan alayhi salam he laid in the period of his imamat. So it was a very, very important role that he played in the 10 years of his imamat. And if you want to understand a little bit more about how important it was, then remember that Imam Hussein alayhi salam continued the policy of his brother after the martyrdom of Imam Hassan for 10 years. as long as Muawiyah lived. And it was only after the death of Muawiyah, and when the Muslims were forced to pledge allegiance to an evil figure like Yazid, that Imam Hussein now began his struggle in a new form. It was still building upon what he had done and what Imam Hassan had done, but it took a new form in light of the new circumstances. So the strategy of Imam Hassan was so complete and perfect that you almost would not tell that there was a change in imamat after the martyrdom of Imam Hassan in the year 50 after the Hijrah. Imam Hussein continued the exact same strategy and method in order to continue the movement that Imam Hassan had begun. So what was the way in which Imam Hassan, he led the Muslim Ummah? I want to just look at 3 of the character traits that we learn from Imam Hassan, and a few of the sayings, inshallah, that will be our lesson and our gift from Ahlul Bayt that we take home with us in this night. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The first attribute was his courage. Normally we associate courage with Imam Hussein. And unfortunately, many people, they have this impression that Imam Hassan, he was not a person who could lead effectively in battle, and he was not a very courageous person, and that is an entirely false impression. In fact, Imam Hassan served courageously in all of the battles at the time of Imam Ali, the battle of Jamal, the battle of Siffin, and the battle of Nahrawan. And if you want to understand the courage of Imam Hassan, then one incident suffices. In the very beginning of the governance of Imam Ali alayhi salam, there was a confusion and a commotion in Kufa. Because from the time of Uthman, there were some people who were a little bit distant from Ahlul Bayt. And the governor of Kufa at that time, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, had an animosity towards Ahlul Bayt. He was not loyal to Ahlul Bayt. And so he would tell the people of Kufa that don't get involved, these are companions. If Imam Ali is a companion, Talha and Zubair are also companions, and they have Aisha with them. So don't go and don't support Imam Ali. Let the situation resolve itself. And in reality, he may have wished for Imam Ali not to be able to succeed and to win in that battle. And it was at that time that Imam Ali, he sent his son, Imam Hassan. And Imam Hassan, along with Malik al-Ashtar, he came to Kufa and he clarified for the people why this battle was an essential battle for the protection of Islam, and why it was important for them not just to wait and see who wins, but to rush and to come and to support Imam Ali in order to ensure that justice wins and evil does not come out triumphant. Now that takes wisdom, and it takes tremendous courage to go into a city that is ruled by an opposing party, where you don't have a history, you don't live there, you don't have a network, you don't have friends, but just by the power of your words and your character, to not only have courage, but to give courage to others, to come out of their city and to support a cause that is just. And sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So that was one of the defining attributes of Imam Hassan. We think that courage means that you will fight, or that you will rise to a challenge and you don't let any insult go unanswered. But the courage of Imam Ali was a courage of wisdom and not of emotion. And therefore, if he did not make war with Muawiyah when some people wanted him to do so, or if he chose a certain way of responding to the evil of Muawiyah, then that was because of his courage, not because of a lack of courage. But it was the way in which to support the values of Islam in the face of the threat that Muawiyah posed, by allowing people to learn and to understand why Muawiyah is evil, so that when they oppose him and when they fight him, they would not do so out of ignorance, but they would do so out of insight and understanding. So it was not a lack of courage. The second attribute of Imam Hassan after his courage was his generosity. In fact, one of the titles of Imam Hassan, as we heard beautifully in the poetry, is Kareem Ahlil Bayt, the noble one or the generous one among the family of the Prophet. And his generosity was because, in the eyes of Imam Hassan, our possessions, our wealth, they are not a goal, but they are a means to an end. Generally, we make that mistake. We think that getting things in this world that we enjoy, that is a goal in and of itself. If I'm young, I really want a toy. And maybe I ask my parents, can I buy this toy? Can I order this toy? Can I get this game or this toy or something that I want? Or maybe we really want food or something that we want to use or experience or enjoy. When we're older, sometimes it's not things, but it's money itself. We want to have as much money as possible. Generally, getting and acquiring that thing, it becomes our goal. But in the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, money and the possessions of this world are important and they are valuable, but only insofar as they are a means to an end. It is better to have money than not to have money. But if you want to use it for a worthy cause, and so Imam Hassan was the noble one, the generous one of Ahlul Bayt, because all that he had and all that he earned, he devoted it to the service of the path of Allah. And that is why history tells us that there were two attributes that Imam Hassan had that defined his generosity. One of them is that twice in his life, he gave his entire wealth, donated it in the way of Allah. Everything that he owned. Now, most of us, if we sometimes suffer a loss in business, or if something goes wrong, we feel like, we're starting out from zero. And we lose our self-esteem, and maybe we even become a little irritated with our family, and we become very stingy. But Imam Hassan, he didn't say, well, I'm starting out from zero. Children are like that too. If you do homework and you lose it, or you're writing, an essay for a class project, and all of a sudden the word processor you're typing on, something goes wrong, you lose your 3 pages, then maybe you don't want to continue your homework at all. That's human nature. But Imam Hassan, he didn't say, well, I can't give everything, I'm going to start out from zero. If the cause is worthy, then what you possess and what you have, it is a step forward to give it and to use it in that worthy cause, not a step backwards. And the second attribute is that Imam Hassan, he gave half of his wealth 3 times in the way of Allah. So twice he gave his entire wealth, and 3 times he divided up all of his savings and all of his wealth, and he said, 1/2 of it I will give in the way of Allah. This is a lesson and a role model for us. If I don't have the courage to do what Imam Hassan did twice, which is to give all of my savings and all of my wealth in a worthy cause, then maybe I can learn from the giving half of my savings or of my wealth or a significant portion. And what makes us generous is to think of what are the worthy causes that we should devote our lives and our savings to. If it's hard for me, then the reason why it's hard is because I don't have the motivation to think of what kind of a world do I want to help create? What kind of a community do I want to build? What kind of a legacy do I want to leave? But if you love something and you value something, then to give your time and to give your money to it, it becomes easy. So the first attribute of Imam Hassan was his courage. The second attribute was his generosity. And the third attribute was his worship. This is a lesson for all of us. It is said that when Imam Hassan used to perform salat, or when he would worship, he would adorn himself and he would put on his best clothing. And this was surprising for people. They asked him, why is it that you are dressing up for salat? You're not going anywhere, and Allah sees you at all times. It's not that Allah is only going to see you when you are praying. And Imam Hassan, he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ جَمِيلٌ يُحِبُّ الْجَمَالِ فَأَتَجَمَّلُ لِرَبِّي. Allah is beautiful. He is the creator of all of the intricacy and all of the beauty that you see in heavens and earth. Allah is beauty, Allah is beautiful, and He loves beauty. And so I adorn myself and I beautify myself when I want to go and meet Allah. And that has a spiritual and a psychological effect on us. And then Imam Hassan, he quoted the verse of Quran, خُذُوا زِينَتَكُمْ عِنْدَ كُلِّ masjid. Whenever you go to the masjid and whenever you go to pray, then go adorn yourself, beautify yourself, because you are going to meet not just an important person, but to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to worship and to speak to your Creator. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So those are three attributes of Imam Ali: his courage, his generosity, and his giving importance to worship, that are a role model for all of us. And it was through those attributes that Imam Hassan, he established a society and a community in the face of the oppression of the tyrant of his time, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. A few of the sayings of Imam Hassan, one in particular for this month of Ramadan. Our second Imam, he is reported to have said, "Man qara al-Qur'an kanat lahu da'watun mujaba, imma mu'ajjala wa imma mu'ajjala." Anytime you read the Quran, you will have a prayer that will be answered and accepted by Allah. So whenever you recite the Quran, then don't just recite it to finish it. Don't just recite it for blessings, but recite it in order to come closer to Allah. Think about what you are reciting, contemplate it, make a commitment that this is going to now form the basis of my values and my character, and recognize that this is something that is very relevant to our lives. Not only does Allah reward it, but also when you recite the Quran, then Allah values that recitation and He guarantees that He will answer your prayer. So every time you recite the Quran, whether you recite a juz or just a page, much or little, recite it with attentiveness and with appreciation, and then don't complete your recitation without making a dua. Because at the end of every qira'at and every recitation, there is a da'wah mujaba, a dua that is answered and accepted by Allah. So that should be, especially in this month of Ramadan, when we are reciting Quran more than at other times, that should be our practice. Recite with attention and complete that recitation with a dua. And think about what dua you want to ask. Because if Allah is honoring you with a accepted prayer, then you want that prayer to be worthwhile and worthy of that honor that Allah is giving you. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And finally, one other hadith narrated from our second Imam, Man arafa Allah ahabba, wa man arafa dunya zahida fiha. Sometimes we might feel that, I don't really feel a connection to God. Or sometimes we might think about our own lives and we realize that we have too much of an infatuation with this world. Right now we've heard that Imam Hassan, he was so generous that he would give generously to the needy, to worthy causes, to build a legacy. In fact, his legacy is the survival of Islam. His legacy is the sacrifice of Karbala and all of those wonderful things that we benefit from and humanity benefits from. Sometimes when we feel that, that's not me. Imam Hassan was generous, but that's not my personality. We can troubleshoot and we can see why is it not me. And one of those reasons is that we don't know who Allah is and we don't know what this world is. So you don't need to force yourself to love Allah. What you need to do is recognize Allah better. By reading the Quran, by reading the du'as and the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, by contemplating and thinking, what are the blessings and the comforts that I enjoy, the gifts that Allah has given me, that without thinking about it, I might just think it's coincidence. Without thinking about it, I might think that, I worked hard and I earned it. But in reality, I realize this was the kindness of Allah. The more you know Allah, the love will come. And if you feel that you don't have a connection to Allah, then it's not because you're not capable of having that connection. But it's simply because you have not yet made the effort to learn who is your creator. Who is Allah? Man arafa Allah ahabba. If you know God, then just the knowledge of God will make you love Him. Because you will realize that everything good that you have, even if it comes from your own hard work, even if it comes from your parents, even if it comes from some other source, that is just the means. But in reality, it comes from Allah, not the means that you should show gratitude to, but rather the source and the one who bestows. وَمَنْ عَرَفَ الدُّنْيَا زَهِدَ فِيهَا. And if I find that I'm stingy, I have a hard time parting with the things of this world, I have a hard time letting go, then what that tells me is I don't know this world. I might think that, I'm going to live here forever. But if you recognize what is the reality of this world and how temporary it is, then you will not be limited to your worldly horizon. These are some of the teachings of our second Imam. He was the beloved grandson of our Prophet, the son of Imam Hassan and Sayyidah Fatima. He was known as Az-Zaki, the purified one, Al-Mujtaba, the chosen one, Al-Kareem, the noble one, and according to ahadith, in his character and even in his physical appearance, he was the most similar person to our Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Through our love of Imam Hassan, we express our love to our Prophet and to the teachings of our Prophet on this day of celebration. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the courage and the devotion and the generosity of Imam Hassan. May we build a legacy in our lives and in our families that is worthy of our love for Ahlul Bayt. And may we have the intercession and the company of Imam Hassan and Ahlul Bayt in this world and in the hereafter. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام على علي أمير المؤمنين. السلام على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين.